In the last episode of the Job Hunting Podcast, Michelle Redfern and I were discussing hiring practices, what's wrong about it, how it's broken, and how we can fix it. In the second part of our conversation, Michelle and I are discussing what job seekers can do during slow periods in the job market. Job markets tends to slow down when we are on holidays, when things are quiet, we get worried. And even though we are only in May, my clients, and I assume many of the listeners of this podcast, are starting to worry about July. And if that's you, then please listen. Note that we recorded this episode just before Christmas, so we were talking about it from that context, but it applies for whenever the job market slows down. And I then discuss practices and strategies for job seekers to utilize and optimize that time and make sure that they keep top of mind and that they don't slow down in their seek for a new role. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, if you listened to the last one, you probably already know this episode was first recorded to be part of the Lead to Soar podcast. That's Michelle's podcast, and therefore she is interviewing me. So it's very interesting to be a guest on your own podcast, but she allowed me to use that recording on the Job Hunting podcast so that we can reach more people. And I hope that you find this conversation useful. If you like the idea of listening to Michelle and you're interested in what she has to offer, which is a lot, I would strongly recommend that you also check out the Lead to Soar podcast. You will find it wherever you found us here. Enjoy the conversation. Hi, I'm Renata Bernardi, and this is the Job Hunting Podcast, where I interview experts and professionals and discuss issues that are important for job hunters and those who are working to advance their careers. So make sure that you subscribe and follow, and let's dive right in.
Welcome back, listeners. Another week, and I'm here talking again with friend of Lead to Soar and mine, Renata Bernardi. Welcome back, Renata.
Hello.
And so, Renata, if you haven't tuned into last week's episode, we talked all about hiring managers. And, well, we talked about you as a hiring manager. Is hiring a burden or a joy? And we broke down all of the reasons why it probably feels like a burden, and also gave some solutions, 3 pillars of solutions about how to make it a joy. But this week we're flipping the script to you as the job hunter, the job seeker. And right now, as we record, it is, well, it's actually November, but by the time this episode goes live, it'll be December 2024. And I know in my network that there are plenty of you out there who are currently or will become job seekers right now. And it's a tricky time of year. And in one of your recent newsletters, the words heebie-jeebies jumped out at me, Renata.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's December and I'm a job hunter. I've got the heebie-jeebies, or I've been in the job hunting market for a little while now. Holy hell, am I going to lose the next 2 or 3 months because of, certainly in Western countries, people go on holidays for Christmas and what have you. So, Renata, what are we talking about here? What are the heebie-jeebies, and importantly, what are we going to do about it?
Yes, I think that's very personal to me because I have been without a job during this time of the year, and I was so anxious about it and so worried and concerned. And when I started coaching, Michelle, I started the Job Hunting Podcast on Halloween. It was 31st of October. And then I started doing courses and programs during the end of the year. So a lot of my online courses are designed for people that are without a job during this time of the year. The first time I ran Reset Your Career, it was at that time. And even the group coaching, I launched it for the first time late December to pick up on that anxiety. And I still, to this day, is the time of the year that I'm the busiest. So I'm very busy right now with people going through sometimes voluntary redundancy, sometimes restructures, and they are in outplacement with me and so forth. So I completely understand. I um, I think it's important as well to think about energy, and this time of the year is, it's so ironic because we look at the TV and we go out to see the window. I'm in Europe, so there's Christmas markets everywhere. Everything is so joyous, but
Mm.
most people that I speak to have very low energy at this time of the year. Very low energy.
And for many of them, very high anxiety as well,
Mhm.
because, I think there's, I want to be very, very real here. As you know, listeners, I always am very real. If I've been out of work for some time and I'm, still a job hunter, or whether it's recent, money,
Mhm.
I've got to earn, right? And there's this view that, okay, the job market goes on holidays. So that means my opportunities for jobs go on holidays. And and it is a time of year of consumerism, let's face it. So I think that money kind of, holy hell, when am I going to earn? But also my self-esteem that goes with having a job. Oh yeah, all of the things that we know. But
Mhm.
is it fact or a myth that the job market goes on holidays in December,
No,
January?
it's a fact. It's a fact. You will still find jobs advertised, but it is a slow time.
Mm.
You and I have listeners and clients in the US and in Australia. In Australia, we have summer, so things will be slow up until Australia Day, which is the
Yep.
26th of January. And in the US, it's not as bad, but many companies in the US and even in Europe have the end of the financial year as also the end of the year. In Australia, it's July to June. Many American companies is January to December. So they have the end of financial year work that they need to do, and AGMs and this and that. So nothing really picks up before February, even for them, even if it's winter. So I think it's interesting also to remember this. And I know that I work with privileged people and privileged clients. Most of them, even though financially being unemployed is tough, and I've
Mm.
been in that situation, most of the anxiety, Michelle, comes from the mindset. It's
Mhm.
psychological more than financial, right? I
So
have I have discussed this with clients where they would come to me and say, "Oh, I think I'll be okay for the next 4 months, 6 months." In fact, if you adopt a different budget, you can even last longer than that. But in their minds, being without a job for that long is suicide, when it's
yeah,
not. It is not. Recruiters don't care anymore. Nobody minds, especially the most senior you are, the harder it is for you to get a job.
of
It's
course.
because of the pyramid. You're not looking for a job at McDonald's anymore. You are looking for a senior role. And if you're
Mhm.
in Australia, it's a very small job market. If you're in a small town in many places in the US, it's a small job market as well. You have to be um, aware of that and plan yourself for that psychologically, so that in the future, for the rest of your career, you need to always have a safety net ready to go. But
Mm.
this is actually the time you use your safety net. If you have savings, if you have family that can help, if you can rent, one of your bedrooms, whatever you need to do, this is the time. It's not for the future. It's now that you need to activate those strategies to set yourself up for success.
So that's the very practical side.
Mhm.
But what about you talked about the emotional and the psychological side. So let me put a scenario to you. Well, of
Mhm.
course, it's December. What happens in December? We go to Christmas parties and family gatherings and, what have you. Even for non-Christians, there's kind of stuff going on. There's social gatherings. Oh, how are you, Renata? What are you up to now? I'm
Mm.
unemployed. I'm looking for a job. Ha- that can be soul destroying
Oh
to
yeah.
say, well, I'm, and I'm quoting one of the very senior women who attends my Hour of Power group coaching sessions every Friday in Leeds Saw. And she is just a wonderfully talented woman, but she's been in the job hunting market for most of this year. And she says with a bright smile, I'm professionally unemployed. But sometimes the smile isn't as bright as other weeks. And it's a tough thing to have to show up and say, I don't have a job. How do you coach people around, number one, preparing for that, Renata, but managing it?
No, it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing. And we sometimes do more than one session just so that we can get the narrative right. I have had clients that had more than one session with me just to work out what to say to their parents, right?
I can believe it. I can believe it.
And
Yeah.
I understand that 100%. And the Christmas time is a tough time. Personally, I have been there more than once, so I know how it feels. And getting that narrative right is really important. I sort of found my sparkle, maybe my inspiration to help my clients in the oddest place. I spent 2 weeks in intensive care with my son. My son spent 2 weeks in intensive care in another country. I had to fly over to meet him there. It was very distressing and of course horrible for the entire family. And he was in a very difficult state, and it was just before Christmas, by the way. So we landed back in Australia on the 22nd of December. And during that time in intensive care, he had a psychologist that would come and see him every day to discuss how he was feeling and to discuss what he would say about how he looked. At the time he had received terrible burns. He's completely fine now. And they would create different stories. How about you say you were bitten by a crocodile? He was young at the time. Right? How about you say, and he was then supposed to create all of these different scenarios and play around with the truth and play around with what to say. And basically she was empowering him to tell whatever story he wanted to tell because it was nobody's business.
Yeah.
Right. And I loved that, and he fully recovered. Thank goodness. It was all fine. This was a school excursion overseas that went terribly wrong. And he went back home and he told whatever story he told. Anywho, I actually use that for my clients. And I tell them, how much do you want to say? What do you want to say? It's totally up to you. It's no one's business what happened to you. Right? Now, when you talk to a recruiter, is different because you have to be authentic and you have to be professional, and they will pick up on a lie. Never lie to a recruiter. They do this all day, every day. All a recruiter does all day, every day is talk to people that have no jobs. Right? So you're no different from anybody else that they see. And what they want is to know exactly what happened to you in the best possible way possible so that they can move on. This is their due diligence. They need to ask you this in order to move on to the meaty stuff, the important stuff. But you need to tell them what happened.
That is quite interesting. So there's the narrative for family, friends, networking, whatever it may be, and I love that, and I want to explore a couple of quick tips there. But be brutally honest with your recruiter because they can probably smell a bit of bullshit anyway.
They do. Do never bullshit the recruiter. And I think with the recruiter also, it has to be crisp and clear and confident.
So there's also a narrative that you can coach on there, Renata. So you help your clients with that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
No, because it's important, and because mostly what has happened to my clients is not unique. It's very rare that somebody comes to me with a unique situation. They all think it's unique. And then they say, oh, maybe you're not used to this. This is what happened to me. And I'm like, This has happened to like 100% of my clients, but every now and then there will be a really difficult case, and that's the case I want. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
please let me help you, because this is so different and so unique. I actually want, as a coach, to learn from you. By coaching you, I will learn from you. But most of the time, restructures, being made redundant,
Yeah.
layoffs, terminations, because you're not seeing eye to eye with the chairman anymore. The board wants you a different type of CEO or CFO or CMO or CG. This is normal. Like, this is part and parcel of being a corporate professional. If you were a footballer and you were, or a rugby player, whatever, and all of a sudden the team needed a different type of skill, you would be traded with another
Absolutely.
football. I mean, you're in
I
sport.
was going to say you're talking my language now because you're talking footy, but you're absolutely right. Oh my goodness,
And some
we've ended
people,
up with 10 full forwards, and we actually need more mids. 2 full forwards have to go, and we get in 2 mids. I totally agree. And again, I think there's some mindset stuff around that. My job is no longer there, but it doesn't mean I'm not. I'm still the great person I am. And, coming back to our previous week's podcast, what are my strengths? What am I good at? But I want to get into these tips. Okay. I have to go to my partner's Christmas party with them in 2 weeks' time. People are going to say, so what do you do, Michelle? How do I get ready for that, Renata? What do I need to think about? And because everyone's going to have their own narrative, as you rightly said, but without, apart from you need to go and work with Renata, but, what are some things I should be thinking about to prepare myself for that? Because it's going to happen, right? I'm unemployed. And how can we prepare our language or our narrative?
What you've just said about before, about you being you still being a professional in your area of expertise, is exactly the answer to that question. So myself, for example, if I left the John Monash Foundation just before Christmas. I started working at Monash University in March. So I was without a job for about 4 months, right? I got that question. What do you do, Renata? I work in the not-for-profit sector. I've worked in higher education. My most recent job was in the not-for-profit sector. My key areas is government relations, fundraising, business development. Though that is my answer. Oh, why did you leave your job? So, it was the end of my contract. I didn't want to renew it. The board wanted somebody different to lead the organization. I was ready to leave. That's it.
I love that. That is just so simple. And you know what you've done there, which long-time listeners will know what I'm going to say here. You've stated your positional purpose. I am a CEO who, in the not-for-profit sector, who raises funds, builds relationships, and delivers the outcomes. It's actually about I say the 3-parter is, what are the problems I solve, the value I create, the outcomes I deliver. That doesn't change with your employer or your job. It is the essence of your strengths and what you bring, how you show up. I love that.
And in fact, if you say, I'm looking for new opportunities, that's when people will say, oh, tell me more, maybe you can.
I know so-and-so. You should go and talk to so-and-so. Let me make an introduction.
Exactly.
Strategic networking. I love it.
Yeah. The other thing that I have gone through, and I know many of my clients and your listeners might go through as well, is when you want to do a career change. So, like I said, the other time that I was without a job was when my role was made redundant at Monash University. I left. It was beginning of November, and I was heartbroken. Imagine a person who is really, really sad. That was me, right? Because I felt like I had many more years to go at Monash. The job was just fascinating, but it was extremely challenging. And there was nothing that we could do. Politically, the scope wasn't there. There was no reason to keep me there. Remember that time when we had like 5 different ministers in sort of 3 years.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
The reason why they hired me did not exist anymore.
Yeah.
It was that situation. So I then immediately received an invitation to come in for a conversation for a role, a CEO role, and I wanted to vomit. I wanted to vomit. And that's when I knew
I
that as a
take it it's not something that you wanted.
it was a great role. It was a
Mm,
great role. I knew the chair. I knew like it was such a good role for me. It would fit me like a glove, but
mhm.
I didn't want it anymore. I wanted to be a coach, and it was time for me to move on. Then the conversation can get really complicated, right? Because people that love you don't want you to change.
No.
Why? But you're so, and I've done this to my own friends. I have a
Yeah.
friend who was an
But you're
excellent
so
teacher.
good at that, Renata. Why would you
Yes.
give it all up?
Oh my gosh.
Or why would you give up the security of a job with going out on
Yes.
your own?
Yes,
Mhm.
to be a coach. What are you
Mm,
thinking? And coaching even has this stigma. Like people don't
mm.
really know what coaching is, and it's not regulated. So of course you have good coaches, bad coaches. So I got lots of weird faces at Christmas time that year, right? So
Mm.
you need to be quite strong, right? And I have helped a lot of senior executives who came to me for that reason to say, I am burnt out. I don't want to be a CEO anymore.
Yeah.
How can I tell my headhunters who are hunting me, my family, that it's time for me to change, right? What's the best way to do that? And sometimes people that love you and adore you can be your worst enemies when you're going through a career change.
Because it's making them feel uncomfortable. And I think that's a big part of it. I like that. So you're helping people to, number one, identify the scenarios that are going to come up.
Mm.
And so, prior preparation prevents poor performance. We know that. So let's identify and plan. Where will I be over the next couple of months, 3 months, whatever it may be? What am I likely to encounter? Number two, choose your narrative. It's your story. And as you so rightly said with the example of your son, this is your story. It's private, and you say what you want to say. And I think that is so well linked to the next point, which is know my strengths, know my value, know my positional purpose. Who am I in the world? And present that story. But
Mm.
have a narrative, have a story that is suitable for a number of different scenarios, whether it be family and friends, networking, a social gathering with my partner or friends, whatever it may be, but prepare. So you're
Yeah.
helping people prepare for that. So I think that's a really good part of it, because I think, as much as, we all want to belong, we all want to be included, we all want to be respected. And part of that is that our identity is so wrapped up in what we do. So
Yeah.
not being able to say that is a big part. So that's
Mm.
someone, I think it's really great advice, Renata. But number two is, what should I be doing over this period of time?
Yes.
Because,
Yeah.
okay, maybe the jobs aren't there, but there's still work to do, right?
Yes. Well, a couple of things. Sometimes let me start by saying that Seek.com knows this. This is the time of the year where a lot of people are looking at websites like Seek.com or LinkedIn Jobs or Indeed and whatnot. Like it goes through the roof, the number of people that look at those job boards. But it's much reduced the number of jobs advertised during that period. It is what it is, right?
Mhm.
People are on leave, recruiters take time off, HR professionals we know are mostly women. Most women would have kids and they need to take time off because it's holidays, yada yada. So there are not a lot of jobs advertised. I love that time of the year. As a career coach, I can actually make my clients focus more on the actual work of career planning and design, of preloading the work that you do in terms of preparation before you go to market. right? So
Mhm.
understanding what you want out of your career, thinking long term, um, preparing your documentation, updating your LinkedIn. There's just so much that you can do when the market is slow, so that when it's back on end of January, beginning of February, you can hit the ground running, right? So
Yep.
these things, I actually love working with clients at this time of the year because I can make them focus more and they're not so distracted by red herrings and,
Yeah.
conversations and this and that. But there are two other things that I really like about this time of the year. If you are open and vulnerable and have conversations with other people, you can learn so much. So business intelligence, tell me about the organization you work for and just bloody listen. It's not about you. Nobody's worried about you not having a job. Just listen. And you can even say, oh, and this is what I do and I'm looking for work next year. What would you do if you were me?
Mhm.
When was
Ask
the
for
last
advice. Yeah,
time
beautiful.
you looked for work,
Mm,
right? I
mm.
love I love people that actually engage in conversations and learn
I
from.
I just want to say that's actually really good because it's an ask. So we talk about, the courageous ask, but it's in a way of, it's a really engaging way. Not, can you give me a job, Renata?
Oh,
No,
please, yeah.
I'm looking for a job, and here's what I do in the world. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion
Mm.
consultant, and next sort of January, February, I'm going to be looking for an in-house job. I'm not, by the way, listeners, but this is just go with me. Renata, you've been in, a CEO, and you're around. What advice would you give me about that? I love that. That's just absolutely fabulous. But I also I love the business intelligence link. Listen in. What's happening in industry? What's happening in the economy? Listen to what's happening, because if you might hear a nugget of, well, of course, we've got the change in US presidency, and of course, I lead the Australian division of a multinational. And what we're going to find is we've already got the signals that in February, productivity pushes are going to really go up in the US. So we're going to be hiring, and it's fascinating. Hang on a minute,
Mm.
productivity pushes, So when you're tuning in, you can
Yeah.
start to see the big picture and say, well,
Mm.
okay, maybe I should consider a different sector or something like that. So tuning in is really important as well.
Yes. Yes, I think those organic conversations where you don't feel like you need to over explain yourself is really important. It sets such a great um it's a different paradigm, I think, that people are not really used to. And I think because they have learned, frankly, they have learned networking wrong, all wrong.
Totally,
And
totally.
just think about the things that we know are true in the sort of corporate world for women. Um, you know how they say, make sure the idea is theirs, not yours. If you're,
Yes.
I know it's
Mm-hmm.
old fashioned, but it works every time. One of the things that I think doesn't work is when you ask people to introduce yourself to others. I had that this week. A woman said, look, had a consultation with me and said, look, I was discussing this opportunity with a friend. He was actually telling me I should apply. I asked him to introduce me to the hiring managers because I know he knows the hiring manager. And guess what, Renata? He hasn't emailed me. And I'm like, you know why? Because you made this uncomfortable. He doesn't want
Absolutely.
to introduce you to everybody in the audience. Please stop asking people to introduce you to whoever, and stop asking people for coffees as well. It's
Oh
so
my
difficult
God, you're
for
talking
people
my
to go
language, lady.
out. Michelle, you and I, how many times have we had a coffee?
Never.
Never. I love you. You know that, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
How many
So
episodes have we done together? Lots. Why? Because
lots.
it's easy for us. So don't
Yeah,
make things
make it
difficult
easy.
and uncomfortable.
What should I do then? I go, oh God, Renata Bernardi, she's the CEO of a very important organisation. She's got a job going, and I know her CFO.
Mm.
How can can I ask my friend the CFO to introduce me to Renata? How could I make that? What should I do, Renata, instead of that? What
Well,
should I do?
let it be their idea, not
Yep.
yours. Right? So it happened to me, and that's the Monash job that I got. I had left the foundation. My lovely friend Sue Zablet, who is also a coach and has been on my podcast, she said, "Oh, let's workshop a few ideas together." You know, she's being all coach and mentoring me. I'm like, yeah. We spent like 2 hours just writing on a whiteboard all the things that I could do, and she was so keen to give me advice. And I said, "Oh, Sue, I don't know. We're talking, but all I want to do is go back to Monash. Have you seen this thing that happened? The vice chancellor Margaret, who's now the governor of Victoria, advertised that she's starting um, this new enterprise portfolio, and she hired this uh, English guy to lead it." And she's like, "Oh, I know him." And I'm like, no, you don't know him. He's not in Australia yet. He's in the UK. She's like, "I know him." And I'm like, "You're joking." He said, "No, I know him." I said, "Well, okay, tell me more." "Oh, no, yes, I can't, he's not in Australia yet, but I know him. Do you want me to introduce you? I could introduce you."
Oh, that'd be nice.
I did not ask for that. And if she hadn't offered, I still wouldn't have asked, because it's a
But
step too
here's
far.
but here's what happened, and this is what so like your friend, I will be talking with amazing women, and some and often they've come to me for advice. Michelle, can I just have 30 minutes of your time? Yep, no problem. What do you want to talk about? This, cool. Let's talk. Blah 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 blah. And we have all the questions and what have you. And they might say, there's, and I'm thinking of a particular woman that I've had the great fortune of mentoring over the last few years, and she expressed her ambition. She expressed her aspiration around a particular role in sport, and I went, "Oh, but I know so and so and so and so." And I know her, and I know her track record. I know how good she is at what she's done, and she's been vulnerable enough to say to me, "These are the things I'm really good at." Because we get coached not to say that. And I've got to know her, and I went, "You know what? I really want to connect you with so and so and so and so, because I think you would be great for that organisation." Guess what? I did. She did. A relationship formed, and she's now working for one of them. At no time did she ask me to do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I think there's a real, so that the moral of the story here is, when you're working with people who are well networked and have contacts, be very clear about your value proposition and what you want. So this comes back to, we talked about it last week. What are your strengths? So I think some of the other work that we can do in this downtime over the holiday period. Are you working with people to really get clear on their strengths and what they bring? Is that something else?
Oh, yes. Look, a couple of things about strengths. They are way more important than your weaknesses. Do not spend downtime investing in more executive education because you feel that there's a gap that you need to fill in, I don't know, whatever it is, right?
I'm sorry, listeners. I'm chuckling away here because my wife has just walked past to go out the door, but I do remember her saying, "Misha, no more training courses. You are smart enough. Just get on with it."
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
laughing
I
because
think sometimes, and I think, Michelle, you don't know this, but the first episode we recorded together was on my podcast, and you discussed how your MBA was so important for you, right? Remember that?
Yep.
And most of the time, and I teach at Masters at Monash University, but most of the time I'm telling my clients, do not invest in MBAs when you are unemployed, right? Your MBA should be part of your professional development, as part of your performance management, supported by your next employer, at least as a study leave, if not, financial support as well. If you want to do professional development to understand cybersecurity or ESG or AI or whatever it is, you can do it. You don't even need to add that to your resume. Not everything you do needs to be added to your resume. Sometimes adding too much stuff to your resume actually diminishes your executive presence. So you just have to be careful not to present yourself for somebody who is learning. Sometimes you need to have that executive presence. That's the whole performance of the recruitment and selection process that we discussed before in
I
the book.
agree with you, because I certainly, as a hiring manager, I have looked at people with a great long list of qualifications and trainings and thought, that's great, there's all the theory, but I'm not seeing that replicated in their track record. What
Yeah.
have they delivered? And they're not able to articulate how they've brought that learning to life to solve my problems that I'm hiring for.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really, really
So
good piece of advice.
that articulation is the whole understanding of your strengths, right?
Mm,
So I
mm,
work with a strengths assessment program. When I'm working with my private coaching clients, that's not where I start, because I believe that strengths assessment is great. You can actually go to my website and do it, get the report, etc. What worries me is that you will do it, get the report, and then never look at it again.
mm-hmm.
I don't want you to be, frankly, I don't want you to be lazy and go back and read whatever strengths assessment you've done in the past. Maybe it was a Gallup, whatever. I want you to actually workshop and brainstorm yourself in a notebook. Write it down, what your strengths are, what your competencies are, what leadership style do you have. Frankly, if you have a team of more than 3 people and you don't understand leadership styles and leadership management theory, that's where you need to start. Just get yourself a Peter Drucker book. Start from the basics and move up. Don't tell me that you're servant leadership if you have not read
Oh my God. Yeah.
servant
Well,
leadership.
I can, there's two articles, one by Drucker, which is why should anyone be led by you, which is a
Mhm,
great HBR article which captures exactly what you've just said. And number
mhm.
two is Leadership That Gets Results by Daniel Goleman et
Yes.
al. And
Yes,
others,
yes.
which
Love
gives the
that.
6 leadership styles
Yeah.
and how do you, and I teach that now. In fact, I spent a day with a group of executives this week talking about leadership styles and using them and how to describe who you
Mhm.
are. So they've got homework at the moment, which is,
Yeah.
what is your leadership philosophy and story? Because
Mm,
you will be asked, whether it's by your people, but in this case, by people who are going to hire you. What can we expect from you, Michelle, as a
mm,
leader?
mm.
Well, what you can expect is that I always lead from out the front. I like being out front, but I've learned that I need to check in and make sure people are coming with me. That's
Mm,
it. So I
mm.
love that, Renata. So don't go and do an MBA or executive learning.
No.
Figure out who you are, how you want
Yeah.
to show up. Why should someone hire me? What's that?
Mm.
What's my? I was going to say pitch then, but it really does go beyond a pitch because you need to deeply know this.
Yes. And
Okay.
we cannot finish without saying that none of this will work without LinkedIn. I'm sorry, everybody.
Oh, I'm so glad you went there, because I was just about to talk about strategic networking,
Yeah.
and that is such a massive tool, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is what's happening at the moment. This is end of 2024. 2025 will be even more so. Recruiters don't need to advertise roles anymore, Michelle. Nobody needs to advertise roles anymore. You can be found. So if
Yeah.
you're not on LinkedIn with an optimized profile that can be easily found, you are in trouble, right? That's why
Totally.
I do LinkedIn audits, and that's why it's so popular. I'm like website SEO experts.
Hmm.
That's me for LinkedIn, right?
I love that. I love that.
You
So
have
there
to,
you go. And that
you have to
isn't
be
that a great
optimized.
thing? This is
Yeah.
the stuff I do. I optimize your LinkedIn profile. What a
Yeah.
great positional purpose,
Yes.
Renata. And what a great time to look at optimizing your LinkedIn profile over this, in inverted commas, quiet time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for long-term listeners and members of Lead to Soar and others, you will know that in Lead to Soar, we use December as our stop, breathe, reflect month. Stop, breathe. Now reflect. Where am I? How did I get here? What still serves me, what no longer serves me, and what am I going to do about that? That is a great reflective exercise, no matter what stage of your career or job hunting or whatever it may be. But for job hunters, that's what you were saying is stop, breathe, reflect, and then say, and what do I do about that? And
Mm.
and I cannot emphasize enough or agree with you enough about LinkedIn, Renata. It is, honestly, I can say I still get. I'm now getting WhatsApp messages from recruiters and text messages and LinkedIn messages and emails saying, I know that you're this, but we have a CEO job. Are you interested? Or a board of advisors or whatever it may be. So I am not job hunting, but I am still being headhunted
Mhm.
periodically. And that is absolutely because of my online presence.
Yeah.
So, it is so important. What's one thing? Okay, one thing that job hunters can do with you around their LinkedIn, Renata. You mentioned it briefly, but let's go there.
Sorry, let me understand again. What is it that they can do with me or by themselves?
No. There's something you offer. So your LinkedIn. Tell us about the LinkedIn audit.
Oh yeah, so the LinkedIn audit is really like an SEO website audit. So I will review the profile top to bottom, aiming at maximizing it so that it can be found by recruiters for the positions that you're looking to be found for. So, what I am told by people that have done LinkedIn audits with me is that it completely changes the game for them. So they can see in their insights, in their metrics, if they have LinkedIn Premium, that the profile is being looked at much, much more. And of course, they then find that they don't need to apply for jobs as much. I have clients that sometimes don't even know what to do. Like, it seems like I'm not doing anything. I'm like, what are you saying? You have 4 interviews coming up, because this is how LinkedIn works now. You need to be found for the jobs that you want. Recruiters will come to you either by messaging you, or they will use your contact details, email, mobile number, if you're keen to let it publicly available, and they will find you. And it needs to be optimized top to bottom. So the blue chip real estate is the first box there. So we need to optimize all of that. And there are some things that are behind my client IP. I'm not going to tell
Of
everybody
course, of
what I
course.
do, but
Yep.
it's so important and nobody knows about. And then as we move down to the about section and each of the work experiences, all the way up to the skills you need to have, everything, we do that. And depending on the professional, we discuss activities. Why do I say depending on the professional? Because everything is tailored. A client of mine in the Middle East will have a very different profile to a client of mine in Belgium, to a client of mine in New York City, to a client of mine in Melbourne. So I have clients all over the world. The profiles are not the same. They have to be acceptable geographically and also at the level that the professional works at. So if they're very senior, and then there's industry as well. So if somebody works at the Department of Justice in Australia, they do not do activity on LinkedIn, but they
No.
can do messaging. So, we look at the different ways we can optimize the LinkedIn profile for their profession, their geographic location, and area of expertise.
I love that. And listeners, I'm going to put a link. I'm going to put all the links into the show notes so that you can tap into that. So if you're a job hunter, just to bring us to a close, because we could talk quite literally for hours,
Yes.
to bring us to a close, if you're job hunting right now in December 2024 or any time, but particularly in the holiday season, some things to pay attention to. Number one, start building your narrative. How do I handle myself in the inevitable gatherings and environments where I have to explain what I'm doing? And getting your narrative ready means that you are dealing with all of the mindsets, the anxiety, the guilt, and the shame about that people inevitably have. Number two, don't enroll in an MBA at this time, but do identify your strengths and the development that you need to do. Again, I think, have a look at Renata's website. She's got lots of really good tips about here's some things to do, but go and listen to her podcast as well, because it pretty much whatever you think, I reckon I should be doing this over the next couple of months, there will be a podcast about it. And number 3, get that LinkedIn profile optimized. It is such an important tool. And you have so rightly said it, Renata, that jobs are not advertised. The best jobs are often not advertised. A search consultant will be given a task, go and find this person, and they will use LinkedIn because it's pretty much the only professional black book out there in the world that's online. So if you can't be found, you can't be found. So that's the 3, I guess, macro tips. Renata Bernardi, anything else? One more thing one more piece of advice for a job hunter coming into this period. What's one thing you want to tell them?
You know what? Take a break. Take a break. You will be okay. You will find a job next year. You will find a job in a few weeks, in a few months. You can take a break from job seeking during this time or any time, and you will still be fine, right? I say this because sometimes people are very burnt out this time of the year. Even if you're fully employed, you're going to be burnt out. Your brain needs to rewire before it can be creative again, before it can be inventive and be inspired by your next career steps. And to go from that fight and flight mode into, workshopping what you will do next is not going to do you any good. Take at least a few weeks off to rewire your brain. Yeah.
I love it, because job hunting is a job.
Yes.
So let's have a holiday from that job. I love that. Renata, thank you for being with us over these 2 weeks and, really, as always, helping our community to just understand and navigate the process of job hunting. You're such an expert and such a great friend to the community and to me. So thank you very much, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, and all of the things to you and your family.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Back at you.